Greetings everyone, this is Collectibles Euphoria with a toy review of Figma's Thor action figure from the Avengers. Stay tuned! Figma's line of Marvel superhero action figures started with the first in line being Thor, God of Thunder. These Marvel figures represent our favorite Avengers as they appeared in the Avengers movie, with the current movie shown in cinemas, Avengers Age of Ultron. The box follows the new standard for Figma figures from Good Smile Company, with the front being fairly nondescript and generic. The Avengers logo is there, with this figure being number 216. On the side of the box are images of Thor. Staying true to Figma tradition, the back shows plenty of images of the figure, some of which are his iconic poses you can possibly do with this figure. The box itself is a window-style box and is collector-friendly since you can put the figure back in the box for safekeeping and you would still be able to have a wonderful display. This is Thor out of the box in all his glory. His cape is not initially attached, which you still have to place. He can be a little hard to position on the base due to him being heavier than the standard Figma, mainly due to the fact that he's a strong male superhero instead of a slender female anime character. Thor is about 6.25 inches tall. The body sculpt of this figure is amazing. It captures Thor perfectly and has every detail that you would expect and want from the figure. The scale mail is beautiful to look at, and I really appreciate all the intricate details made to it. The attention to details is just perfect. They also did a perfect job capturing the exact details of Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. The hammer is so crisp, clean, and beautiful. Everything would have been perfect except for the head sculpt. The head appears a little smaller to my liking, and some of the facial features of Thor was not completely accurate, though it looks similar to the actor Chris Hemsworth. I have a love-hate relationship though with the cape that came with this figure. The cape is a cloth cape that snaps in under the shoulder armor. It has 3 holes on the top where it attaches to his body. However, the pegs are so tiny, making it very difficult putting the cape on the designated holes. The cloth is folded up and lined up so that the pin goes through all 3 holes, which is a great idea since the fabric is fairly fragile at the holes and looked like it was going to rip if it was held in place by only 1 hole. That is why I decided not to take it off anymore. The holes gave it so much needed strength and added a nice effect to the cape itself. Another bad part was that the holes to hold the cape in place were hidden under the plastic cape top on the figure. Luckily, it can be removed, but at the same time, it's just behind the front of his chest armor and is still fairly hard to access and push in place. I suppose it would be easy with the right tools, but it's very hard with just fingers. However, once in place, the plastic cape part simply goes over it again and behind the chest armor again. Other than the problem attaching the pegs to the holes, I love that they decided to use cloth instead of a soft, pliable material since it gives tons of opportunities to pose. You don't have the soft or semi-hard plastic hindering the poses. Figma figures always come with a ton of accessories like a stand, hands, etc. There aren't a ton of extra hands here though, but they are enough for this figure to have some different looks. He has a pair of default closed fists, a pair of relaxed hands, and a pair of hands to hold his hammer. The stand is a hard translucent plastic with a Figma logo on it. It is easy to assemble and put together, which definitely helps in achieving his poses. At the very end, you can attach it on the small area of the back. The stand gets in the way, however. It is a necessary evil if you want Thor to portray his iconic signature poses. It's really hard to pose him without the cape bending around the base stand in an unnatural way. There's no hole option in the cape or a way to get around it without having the stand removed completely. The cape can be moved to the side, or a small flap could be cut out into the cape. Of course, any Thor figure wouldn't be complete without his trusty hammer, Mjolnir. The detail on his hammer is really impressive, with great attention put on the mystic writing on the edges of the hammer, since the hammer is relatively small. The hammer splits in half at the head of the hammer, making the handle a separate piece so it can easily slide into his fist. Because of this design, it's really easy to turn the hammer to face any direction without removing it from his hand. Thor doesn't come with a standard Figma style face, most likely due to the fact that he's based off a real person instead of an anime character. Since this is the case, he has another option for changing facial expressions, and that is by moving his eyes. Both eyes move independently from each other, making all sorts of expressions possible. Even so, just moving the eyes does do a lot, making him look different directions or even silly things like cross-eyed or rolling his eyes back in his head. This is achieved with a small plastic piece. The eyes are moved by two tiny pegs that stick out of the back of the eyes, roughly the same size as the pegs that hold his fists in place. The non-pointy end of the piece has a peg hole that plugs over and onto the eye peg, allowing the eyes to be moved in any direction. Of course, there are some limits due to the eyes being fixed in the socket, but the eyes can be moved very easily, even without the piece, by simply touching the peg. Thor has a ton of joints, including neck articulation and hair articulation. His neck is fairly thick and his head is on a ball joint, so moving his head can be hard, but it helps that his hair has two joints in the back, allowing it to be moved and giving his head greater movement. The figure also has shoulder articulation that rotates at 360 degrees, lifts up and down, sideways, has single joint articulation on the elbow, and has a wrist articulation that bends, extend, and rotate. He has a very nice ab crunch, back extension, and rotation. It also has hip articulation that moves forward and backward and can move side to side due to the brief area is made of soft pliable material. It also has knee articulation, ankle articulation, and non-standard ones such as toe articulation. I'd say the biggest drawback is the Figma joints in his elbows, which stick out a lot when his arms aren't bent. While not the best Thor toy ever made, since Hot Toys figures make all figures from the other companies pale in comparison, this is still a better option than most US releases from the Avengers toy line, as this figure was meant for people who can appreciate details and intricacy in a figure instead of a simple play value. The cape was very difficult to attach, but once it's on, it's perfectly fine outside of the fact that the base gets in the way of virtually any pose. And while the face isn't perfect, it's good for a Figma figure and has the nice option of moving the eyes to achieve different looks. This figure is recommended for everyone who are into action figure collection and Marvel fans in general. It has virtually unlimited display and play value. I plan on getting the remaining Avengers action figure, and updates on any video review is found on my Facebook page. Have a wonderful day. Bye!